you know the phrase, a glass of water to wash down the foot in your mouth? I didn't know that phrase for a long time, but now I can confidently say that I do. Straight out of college, I took a job with IBM in sales. I had a double major in art history and primatology. So I knew literally nothing about computer systems, software, or tech. So I was very grateful for the chance that they took on me. And they're such a great company. They invested 6 months training me in sales, negotiation, systems, professional etiquette, everything. So I took it really seriously. If they were going to invest in me, I wanted them to get their returns, and I did really well. I grew my accounts. They kept giving me higher goals, but the truth was that I really hated it. I hated it because I was the definition of imposter syndrome. I didn't know that term at the time either, but I did know that weeping quietly under my desk after big meetings was not coming from a place of confidence. Everything just felt so big, and I felt so small, like I didn't have permission to do my own job and be a leader. And as an account executive, it was my responsibility to understand the client's needs and then coordinate all the teams at IBM to find the best solution and ultimately to grow revenue. So it was often a trade-off. Like if we sold software to the client, we wouldn't be selling the outsourcing of that function, which was owned by a different group. So it meant that someone on the team wasn't going to be able to make their sale. And this also meant that my job was telling older, more experienced, almost entirely men what to do. At one point, I remember telling this man who had founded and sold his own company, me, a 24-year-old woman, had to say to him, oh no, we're not going to go in your direction. You can't talk to the client about the product you made and sold. In one such instance of me having to lead the account, we had 2 large conflicting sales on the table at a client who was also in what we called a requisite, which stands for critical situation. They were having some defects with hardware they had already bought. It's terribly boring, but suffice it to say, it was a mess. And there were a lot of players, and it was all at my account. So per the requisite protocol, every day at 2:30, me and about 7 men, in this case, from the tech team, software sales team, and the services team, all had to get on the phone to figure out a way through this mess. And every day we met, and every day we made 0 progress. On like day 8 of this situation, I was dragging my feet to this dreaded 2:30 call, doing little passive aggressive things by not even starting to dial in until the clock had turned 2:31 from 2:30. And on this particular day, I pick up the phone. This is 20 years ago, before Zoom. So, you know, like you had to pick up the phone and dial in the conference code. And I was absently holding the phone under my chin. And I said to myself, I don't want to join this fucking call. And then I, probably continued to stare dead-eyed out the window, seeing nothing, when I hear the automated conference voice say, joining conference. And then I heard my own voice say, I don't want to join this fucking call. And it was dead silence on the line. And my heart was pounding like crazy. And you know how time goes slower in moments just before your life ends? That's exactly how I felt. I remember having enough time to weigh out my options. I knew everybody else was already in the call because I was late. And I knew that they all knew it was me who made that announcement because I was the only female on the team with the only female voice. So I thought maybe I'll just close my computer, push my chair back from the desk, grab my bag, calmly walk to the elevators. You know, I'm still young. I'll just start a new life somewhere else. I'll get a new job, totally new direction. I'll go back to art. We'll just never speak of this again. But I couldn't do that because I was at the office that day, and I would have had to walk past some of the men who were on the call. And what if they saw me waiting in the elevator bank and they either came to talk to me or they were talking about me? It was just like not a clean getaway. And I didn't want to become, you know, the legend of the young girl account executive that would be told at happy hours for decades. I thought about hanging up immediately and just skipping the call that day, you know, just pushing the problem down the road. Tomorrow's a new day. But at some point, I'd come in contact with at least one of the 7 people on the call, and that was just too awful to think about. I thought about gaslighting. I didn't know the term for that then either, but I thought about saying like, oh, what recording? No, I didn't hear anything. You're all crazy. And then just moving on and talking about the agenda for the call. But I played out all these scenarios in my head very quickly, and I did the only thing left, which is I broke the silence and I said, hi guys, I'm sorry. I really do hate this call. I'm Katie Schuele, and I am co-founder and chief customer officer of boostr, which is a software company for ad sales, where I currently run product and customer success. We've been in market for 5 years. We have 70 employees, and some of the greatest publishers that you know and love around the world are our clients. It's an amazing company, and we do amazing things. In case you're wondering, I did make it out alive. And if you're wondering what happened specifically, interestingly enough, the foot in my mouth kind of worked. It turns out that everybody else was miserable. And after my entrance, a lot of awkward laughter, we were able to acknowledge that we all had the same goal. And once we did that, we found an actual solution. It didn't happen in the next 5 minutes, but that's when we got on the right path. And I tell this story because it was formative and remarkable for me. And I consider the lessons I learned from it to be a framework for leadership, particularly if you don't have the experience, the status, or the role of everyone else in the room. Or in my case, maybe if you do, but you still feel like an imposter anyway. My point is, it's entirely within your power to lead. And I love tactics, so I want to share some simple steps for how to do that. There's 3 of them. The first is address everything head on. I mean, do it nicer and with more grace, but don't hide under your desk crying or sit through agonizing meetings on the sidelines watching. Addressing everything head on means identifying the problem. And I don't mean why something won't work in the future. That is hugely annoying when people point out all the reasons something won't work. I mean why it currently isn't working. The phrases that you can use for this, whether it's a systems issue, a people issue, a cultural issue, anything, is literally, this is the problem to solve. Here's what we're up against. This part isn't working. A piece of the data doesn't fit the model. If I had simply said, we've tried to solve for this for a few days now and we're not making progress because we all have conflicting agendas, it would have been truthful and constructive. That was the real problem to solve. And in fact, once we got the real problem out in the open, we ended up making so much more progress. The second is to make space for emotions. I know this one can be hard to practice because especially at work, being emotional can be used as some sort of insult and positioned as the opposite of business or seriousness, like she's too emotional, is something you would hear on a performance review. But I think if you have a room full of passionate, creative people, and I truly hope that you do, it's guaranteed that they have opinions and feelings and a perspective. So whether you want to admit it or not, how they feel about the project is going to shape the outcome. So it needs to be considered as an input. A simple tactic is to ask, how are you feeling about this? And I don't mean like a soft, hand on the arm, like, how are you feeling in the hallway privately? That's for a therapist. I mean, as part of the stand-up and project plan, make space for emotion as a status. So it would look like this. You have a daily stand-up. What's your progress? What's your next step? What are your blockers? How are you feeling about this work? It's simply an additional question. And maybe the answer is good. Maybe it's scared. Maybe it's frustrated. But you have to put it out there so you can address it. What I truly believe is, if you are feeling a certain way, you're likely not the only one. Every single person on my team also didn't want to join the fucking call that day. They just didn't record themselves acknowledging that. Finally, take responsibility. No matter how awful and painful, take responsibility for your mistakes, for the results, for other people, for what you own. If it's good, congratulations. If it's bad, it's just what you have to do. When I think back, I'm so glad I decided to fess up that day, because it made me a lot stronger. Leadership is about finding common ground among yourself and the people that you work with. And you can do that by addressing everything head on, making space for emotion, and taking responsibility. Please reach out to me if you're feeling like an imposter, or if you have your own embarrassing story that turned out to be a life lesson. Good luck out there. Thank you.